Good morning, everyone, and SharpeSoft family. My name is Jonathan Craig. I will be steering our webinar today. We are going to be going back to the basics, really. If you guys have any kind of ideas or any influence that you would like to see in these webinars, please, shoot us an email. We send out the surveys afterwards. Just, leave us a note, something that you might want us to cover. Today we're going to be going back to the basics with our material. So we're both going to be covering it inside the tables as well as in the job. I really would like to start by just kind of explaining how we classify our materials. It's a bit different than the way that we classify anything else. We do have that subgroup in there, so it is a bit different, seeing as how it's the only one with a subgroup. So I like to use the analogy that the material tables is kind of set up like you would a filing cabinet, old school drawers. The group itself is going to be the drawer, so you open the aggregate drawer, and then you're looking inside of that drawer, and then you find the separate subgroups, whether it be asphalt, concrete, dirt, rock, or so forth. So inside those folders, you then have your pieces of paper, which are actually going to be the descriptions of the material that you're going to be using, whether it be AC, cold mix, 3/4 inch crush rock. If we scroll down here, obviously we have these different folders underneath sand, rock, and then we get to, the newer groups. So we have pipe, CSP for corrugated steel, and then we have the paper, if you will, as the actual description. Excuse me. So one thing that we're going to be doing is creating a material inside the tables and walking through that process, as well as creating material on the fly inside of a bid, how to update those prices, and kind of the various different things that go into that concept. So first thing I'll do is I will create a piece of material. So inside the material tables here, we're just going to hit the plus button, and you'll notice that it pops up this empty box right here in the group section. So if you know what group that you want it to be in, if I want it to be pipe, I could just type in pipe, right? Or if I want it to be aggregate, I could just type in ag. But if I don't know, or if you would like to create a new one, you could just hit the magnifying glass here. And that brings up the overarching groups that I have. So if I wanted to create, maybe it's a PC for precast, and then we wanted to do some sort of like manhole, you could create that by just simply pressing the plus button, type in PC for precast, right? You could do that. If you want to, then hit OK. But right now, I'm going to hit no, and then we're just going to create a new pipe, right? So I'm going to hit select here. And then now we've already found the overarching group that it needs to be in. Now we need to look at what subgroup that it needs to be in. So if you know that you want it to be a corrugated steel pipe, you could put it in there. If you're doing like PVC, you could put PVC in there, SDR35, kind of however you want to categorize your different subgroups here. I'm just going to do PVC. Okay, so this is going to be a PVC pipe. I'm going to hit OK. So now we have CSP for corrugated steel, and we have PVC for our PVC pipe. Now we're going to hit select, and then now this is where we create our paper, if you will. So the actual code itself needs to be unique to this specific detail item. So I'll just say this is also going to be a 12-inch, there we go, PVC pipe. And then we buy it by the lineal foot. Okay, and then we hit enter there. Now that actually creates the record of the 12-inch PVC pipe, but we don't have any of the other information to it. We don't have the conversion or anything. Well, you don't really have a conversion weight specifically for the pipe, but like aggregates, you could put in conversion weights. If it's a construction material, you could check that there and then put a percent usage per job. If you already have that on there, there's a bunch of other information that you can put, but really, you're just going to double click in here and then add a vendor code, because that's how it's actually costed. So if we just say this is a plug vendor, and then we get it for, I don't know, maybe 550 a lineal foot, and then you can say whether it is or whether it's not taxable. Okay. And then really without doing too terribly much, we've created that piece of PVC pipe. All right. So along that same vein, inside this material table, if you wanted to, for whatever reason, change the pricing, because it happens all the time, you could just double click, and then instead of 550, if it's 675, you just hand type in there, change it. You can also change the vendor or add different vendors so that you can select different vendors, from whichever you get. You can get a tallied kind of running record of which vendors have offered you this 12-inch PVC at what cost. Alrighty. Another thing that you can do inside the material tables that help a lot is you can actually import in or export out materials. So this mostly comes in handy when you get, a big lengthy list from your maybe core and main or whoever you get, your pipe or your flanges and all of your various things from. You can right click anywhere inside the material table and then go to import from Excel. And then I've actually already created a file here that kind of shows you the format that we would need here. So this one's specifically for our material list, and this gives you sort of an example of how we would want that to get kind of imported in. So if your group is going to be ag for aggregates, that's kind of how that's separated. We have a subgroup code for rock. We have our material code for 3/4 inch crush rock, what its cost is, what the unit of measure is, and then the vendor code. If you don't add the vendor code, it will not add the cost, but it might create your actual detail inside the system. So I'm not going to go through importing a full one, as I've already covered importing items in one of our previous webinars, but I did want to let you guys know you do have that option of being able to import from Excel and kind of dumping in a larger material list if you wanted to, as well as if you wanted to change multiple material rates simultaneously, you could export to Excel, and then you can filter by whatever fields that you want, or you can simply map by order, include your header rows. Duplicates, all that's going to do is it will say the same information if it's pertaining to the same code, because it will show up each individual vendor that you have associated with that. So you can include the duplicates if you want and start the export, change whatever information that you want inside the Excel file, and then import it back in. So that's another option that you have for creating as well as updating and maintaining your material tables. I will pause there for a moment and ask if you guys have any questions currently. Dylan, are we seeing any questions coming into the Q&A chat?
I'm not. I think you are good to go.
Okay. All right. Well, if you guys do have any questions on that, please feel free before the end of the webinar, just shoot them into the Q&A channel. We will be monitoring that. I can always go back and revisit something if, for whatever reason, you guys have any questions on it. But next, we're going to be moving to the section that will be displaying kind of how the materials are shown inside the bid item, how to create it on the fly, and how to change the material rates on the fly as well. Okay. All right. Well, moving on. So next is going to be inside the bid items. So I'm sure if you guys have been to our webinar before, you are fairly familiar with this job. I just call this my webinar job. This is kind of where I make all my changes, anything that has to do with our current webinar. So we have various items in here. I'm actually going to go to our earthwork item and create a new bid item specifically for my material here. And I'm just going to call this one lump sum so that I can have a fresh bid item to work with. So I'm just hitting the plus button on any of that, creating a record, double clicking it, and going to detail. All right. So as we've went over in previous webinars, this is kind of be your tables, if you will, of all of your various items. So we have the bid item tree here. We have our material, labor, equipment, crews, and so forth. So to find your materials, it's going to be the boxes on the shelf icon. Please note that it is the exact same icon as if you click your tables up here at the top. You'll notice that little icon next to it is in fact the boxes on a shelf. So if you're ever curious, which ones that you need, you can also hover over it and it'll show, select materials if you stop your cursor over it. We're just going to click this. All right, so now that we have our boxes on a shelf icon selected, over here in this left side display window, you'll see the overarching groups that we were talking about. So these are the drawers that I mentioned from before. Okay, so if I'm looking for an aggregate, I would open the aggregate drawer, and these are my various different folders underneath. So asphalt, concrete, dirt, rock, sand. If I wanted rock, I would open up my folder, and then I would see all the various different pieces of paper in here that I could be using. Okay, so if I needed crushed rock, you guys can just click and drag this over, and then put in a quantity, and then it automatically fills out the rest. Okay, so that's pretty basic, right? Just clicking and dragging. Even if you do not have a rate saved, you can click and drag. Let's say this 3-inch drain rock here. Maybe I get that for, I don't know, let's say $30 a ton, just 30. Okay, we can type that in, and that's how you change a record on the fly. So we had no rate. We click and drag it in, and now it's asking me to assign a vendor to it. So if I don't know what vendor I want to use, you can hit the magnification glass and go through and find any of our various vendors. I like to use the plug vendor just because it's a little bit easier for me to remember every time. And then you can click update table cost. And now these down in here, these are actually preferences that you can go in your settings and update. So this is if you're changing the cost inside of a job, you can either A, update this record only, which only updates this specific record. B, update the cost for only this vendor throughout the job. So then if you have 3-inch drain rock from the plug vendor and you have 3-inch drain rock from a different vendor for whatever reason, this would only update the cost of this vendor to this amount throughout the job. So that's B. And then C would be update the cost and the vendor throughout the job. So then that would look at every 3-inch drain rock that you have inside your job ever, and then update the cost and the vendor to the new vendor that we chose. So for now, I'm just going to hit this first one. I'm going to hit OK. And then now it updates to $30 a ton. And then I would put, if it's 250 tons or whatever it is, and then we get our total cost. Pretty easy. Okay. So, just to show you kind of again on the fly, if you wanted to change that from 30 to 35, you can click over here wherever the unit cost is, just type in, let's say 35, hit enter, and then you get the same detail item cost update window that pops up, and then you can choose whether you want to update inside the table, whether you want to update this record only, whether it's taxable or purchased. Sometimes maybe for whatever reason, if it doesn't need to be taxed, you could untax it right there. But most of the time you're going to pay taxes on it. And then I'm going to just say update this. And then now if we actually hit refresh, you'll notice over here, we actually have that $35 that we updated inside our actual tables. So this is all that it's doing, is showing the tables displayed in sort of a different manner. Okay, so if we actually wanted to find that pipe that we created earlier, we can open up our pipe, go look at our PVC pipe, and now we have that 12-inch PVC right here. You can click and drag in. We also see that we do have the plug vendor set up already underneath, so it already has cost associated. Okay. The next step would be if we wanted to create a material on the fly. So if you do not have the material inside your tables, what can you do? You can either create it inside your tables, like we mentioned earlier, you can import it, or sometimes you don't have time for all that. You need to just hand create this piece of material right inside the bid item itself. Okay. So let's say I wanted to create another PVC pipe, but maybe a smaller size. So let's say 10 inches. If I don't have that, I only have 12. Of course, you could try to use the 12, but that doesn't make any sense if you need 10. And you could like adjust pricing or whatever, but obviously I don't recommend that. So we would just create it on the fly. So you hit the plus button in here. You'll see that it asks what type of record is it going to be. You can click this down arrow if you don't know, or have you seen up here, the M is for material. We have A for assembly, C for crew, E for equipment, L for labor, and so forth. Okay, so I'm just going to click material here, and then it's going to ask me for a code. Now this does need to be unique. So I'm going to say 10-inch PVC and hit enter. And then when I hit enter, it says the material code that you entered does not exist for 10-inch PVC. Well, I know that it doesn't exist because I'm creating it right now. But if you just were, trying to type in a code and, thought that you had it inside your system, you could select a code. So this will allow you to go try to find it if, you weren't sure which one that you're looking for. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and hit enter again. It's going to say that I did not find it. So what we're going to do is hit insert here. So because we know that it doesn't exist, we're going to hit insert. And this brings up the insert material wizard here. So this is where I can type in the material group. I know it's going to be in the pipe group. I don't even have to search for it, but if you needed to, you could search for it using the magnification glass here. For subgroup, I know that it's going to be PVC because that's what I'm assigning it to already. It is a PVC pipe. So then here we could go 10-inch PVC pipe. Okay. Maybe we don't even have to add the pipe just to try to keep it clean with the other ones. That one was just called 12-inch PVC, so I'll call this one 10-inch PVC. Goes by lineal foot. If you have the actual ID number from your vendor that you get it from, you can put that in there. The construction material, that's where you would check either it is or it isn't. That's like form boards and stuff like that that you don't use completely at one, or you can like take them with you and use at a different location. So we hit next. If you have the conversion weight, it's not really necessary for, let's say, pipes, but for instance, aggregates where if you're using the trench profile, you'll have to do, tons to cubic yards and stuff like that, or vice versa. You can set up the conversion weights in here, but this actually, you don't necessarily need to do so. And then in here, it's going to just ask what the cost is going to be. So then you could either look up your vendor or hand type it in. I'm just going to use the plug vendor for simplicity's sake. And then the unit cost would be, I don't know, I said $6.75 for the other ones. So I'll just do like $6.55 for this one since it's a little smaller. And then I said, yes, it is taxable. And then you hit enter to make sure that it kind of solidifies everything in there. And then I hit finish. And now that hand creates the 10-inch PVC material. And then you just put in whatever quantity. If it's like 1,500 lineal foot, you just type in that and it automatically spits out your total cost. All right, I will pause right here to let you guys get some questions in the Q&A. If you guys have any questions. Really doesn't seem like we're getting any questions in the
It's
Q&A area.
seems like a quiet morning, so I would say that you are good to keep going. Oh, we have a hand raised. Jack, if you do have a question, I would direct you to the Q&A. It's going to be on the top of your screen. Give him another couple seconds if he wants to type that out for us.
Yeah, of course.
Oops.
Haven't seen anything come in yet. Oh, there we go. Oh, so Jack asked, when will the 10-inch PVC populate in the material table? Immediately. If we just hit refresh here, it's right there in the material tables. You can actually go check it inside the table itself as well already. So we have a bunch of aggregates here, but if we scroll all the way down to the bottom, because that's just kind of how I have it set up, it's already inside the material table. As soon as you create the record inside the detail, it immediately creates the record inside your tables. That's all that this is. Over here on the left, this is quite literally just looking at your table list with different filters. So instead of it just being one super long, lengthy, here's absolutely everything you ever had in your system ever, you're able to, classify those down and then look into them however you need to. So yeah, you just once you created that, you don't even have to. I didn't even have to input the price. You could just hit enter, and then it would have created the record over here on this left hand side, and in your tables. All right. Any other questions? You guys can feel free to shoot them in the Q&A chat. We do have a little bit more time. Last month was a little shorter. So I wanted to go a little bit longer today and kind of show you guys maybe one more nifty thing that you can do with the material, with materials. So I'll give you a couple more seconds just to shoot any more questions that you might have. All right. Well, I will continue forth and then always revisit if there are any questions that end up popping up. For you guys, please feel free to, to shoot them in the Q&A chat. So the next section that I'm gonna kind of lightly cover is essentially a different way to use the material comparison feature that we don't typically cover. So as you guys know, the material comparison feature is something that you can get your material vendor to download and then connect with yours, where you can email out a quote or request a quote from your vendor for your selected materials in the package that you decided that you want to, select. Some people don't use that feature, but want to use the material comparison as it is. So one thing that I've thought about is the ability to use that as a way to quickly kind of input your material pricing sort of all at once from your various vendors. So let's see that you get, a couple different prices from maybe Core and Main or wherever that you're getting your piping from. We want to first create that package the same way that you would before. So we're going to hit the plus button here after we've selected the material package or material comparison. And this package, I'll just call it aggregate. Okay. We can go next. And then it's going to ask, how would we like to select the materials to insert? I'm just going to select the overarching material group here. And then I'm going to say that we are looking for all of the aggregates. Okay. And this is going to show all the different bid items that have aggregates associated with it. Okay. Someone would hit next. And this is where you can choose which vendors that you're selecting from, whether you're getting it from Granite Rock or Tykert or wherever. I'm just going to use my plug vendor, and you can select multiple, right? So if it's Butte Pipe or wherever you're getting it, you can select multiple, but I'm just going to select one just to kind of give you the overarching idea of what I'm talking about. So that could be any vendor that you want. We're going to hit finish, and then now it's going to populate. You can either do it sorted by bid item, or you can sort it by material specifically. So in this case, I would probably sort it by material because you're just getting one price specifically for all of your pieces here. But if you wanted to do it, maybe bid items could be in different locations. You could specifically set, by bid item and then plug them in however you want. But let's say that we are getting this plugged in. This is where you could come in and then hand type in. So if you're getting 3/4 inch crush rock for 35.60 a ton, you could put that in there. And then you could just kind of go down the list of, we have two different crush rocks in there. That's funny. But as you're going through, you can go through and put in just different prices. So let's say it's maybe 36 for this one. Just go down, drain rock, I don't know, 55. I'm just kind of spitballing here, just throwing in information. And then what you could do is once you're done with all this, I'm not going to do all of these, but once you're done with them, you could actually load them all. So once you get these all loaded in, sorry about that. Once you get all these loaded in, you can just hit load, and that pushes all of your cost to your actual bid. Okay. And then you could do the same thing for your pipes if you wanted to. You can just close that out and then create a different package. So this will just call the pipe package. Same thing. I want to do it by material group here. Go by pipe and select. Hit next. And then the same thing. Who am I getting it from? I'll just say the plug vendor. Finish. And then it's going to be all of the different types of pipe that we put in. And you would get sorted by material and then plug in whatever price and then hit load. Okay. Any questions on that? Kind of how to, create these material packages and then be able to load all of their rates, at once rather than having to navigate through the job and find them and then update them, manually. You can kind of do it by package. I will take a few moments to let you guys formulate any questions if you have them. Does it look like we are getting any questions in?
Looks like we are good to proceed.
All righty. Well, that is pretty much it today for my material webinar. I hope you guys learned something that you can use today in your everyday lives using our program. As always, if you ever have any questions or anything, I am your go-to contact. You guys feel free to shoot us an email at support@sharpsoft.com. And then I will let Dylan take it away.